A black teenager returned a lost wallet to a wealthy businessman. But when a crowd gathered and someone called the police, the old man's reaction left everyone stunned. Marcus Johnson woke up at 5:30 a.m. to the sound of his mother coughing in the next room. The thin walls of their apartment didn't hide much. He lay there for a moment, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of her getting ready for her first job of the day. "Mom!" he called out, swinging his legs over the side of his bed. "You okay?" "I'm fine, baby. Just this cold hanging on." Her voice was rough, tired. "Go back to sleep. You got another hour." Marcus couldn't go back to sleep. He never could when she sounded like that. He pulled on his gray t-shirt and the same khaki pants he'd worn yesterday. They were still clean enough. The mirror showed his short black hair needed a trim, but that would have to wait. Money was tight this month. Tighter than usual. In the kitchen, his mother stood at the counter, counting pills into her hand. She jumped when she saw him. "Marcus, you scared me." She quickly pocketed the pills. "What are you doing up?" "Thought I'd get to the store early. Mr. Chen needs help with inventory." His mother's face softened. She was already dressed in her cashier's uniform for the supermarket, her hair neatly braided. Even sick, she never let herself look anything less than presentable. "You're working too hard," she said, touching his cheek. "You're 16. You should be sleeping in, hanging out with friends." "Friends cost money," Marcus said with a small smile. "Besides, Mr. Chen pays cash." His mother sighed. "Baby, about that." She sat down at their small kitchen table. "Dr. Williams says I need to cut back my hours. Just for a while, until this infection clears up." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "How many hours?" "I'm dropping the evening shift at the diner." That was almost half her income. Marcus sat down across from her, his mind already calculating. Rent was $850. Electric usually ran about $95. Gas around $60. Food, they could cut back on food. "I'll pick up more hours," he said. "Mr. Chen always needs help. And maybe the library is still hiring dash, no?" His mother's voice was firm. "School comes first. Your grades dash. My grades are fine. All A's in math. MS. Peterson even said dash. The same MS. Peterson who gave you a B on that test when every answer was right." His mother's eyes flashed. "The same one who couldn't believe you solved that equation without a calculator." Marcus looked down at his hands. "She apologized for that. Only after I went up there." She reached across the table, took his hand. "Baby, listen to me. Your education is everything. It's your way out. Your father dash, don't." Marcus pulled his hand back. "I've got to get to the store." He grabbed his backpack, checked that his homework was still inside. His mother watched him from the table, her face tired and worried. "Marcus dash, I'll see you tonight," he said, heading for the door. "Don't forget your medicine." The early morning air was cool on his face as he walked the 6 blocks to Chen's corner store. The streets were quiet, just a few other early risers heading to work or the bus stop. A woman crossed to the other side when she saw him coming. Marcus kept his head down, hands visible, just like his mother had taught him. Mr. Chen was already opening up when Marcus arrived. The old man nodded at him, keys jingling. "You early today," he said, his accent thick but friendly. "Everything okay?" "Yes, sir. Just thought I'd help with inventory before school." Mr. Chen let him in, flipping on the fluorescent lights. The store smelled like cleaning products and yesterday's coffee. Marcus headed straight for the stockroom, pulling on the red apron with the store logo. He was halfway through counting cases of soda when he heard voices up front. The morning rush was starting. "I told you, we don't take hundreds this early," Mr. Chen was saying. "Too many fakes. It's real, man. Just got it from the bank yesterday." Marcus recognized the voice. Tommy Andrews, senior class president. He'd copied off Marcus's math test last semester, then told MS. Peterson that Marcus must have cheated because how else would he know that stuff? "No hundreds," Mr. Chen repeated. "Store policy. Come on, it's just for coffee and a bagel. Don't you trust me?" Marcus stayed in the stockroom, counting the same case of Coke for the 3rd time. He knew what was coming. "Hey, Chen," Tommy called out. "Send your boy out here. Let him verify it. He's good with money, right?" Marcus's hands tightened on the clipboard. Mr. Chen appeared in the stockroom doorway. "You no need to go out there," he said quietly. "I handle it." "It's okay," Marcus said, setting down the clipboard. I'll help. He walked out to the front counter. Tommy stood there in his Letterman jacket, $100 bill in his hand and a smirk on his face. There he is. My man Marcus. Tell your boss this bill's legit. Marcus took the bill without looking at Tommy. Held it up to the light. Checked the security strip, the color-shifting ink. It was real. He'd gotten pretty good at spotting fakes working here. It's good, he said to Mr. Chen. See? Tommy spread his hands. What did I tell you? Marcus knows his stuff. Probably counts money all day in here. Right. Marcus handed the bill back to Mr. Chen, who rang up Tommy's coffee and bagel in silence. Thanks, man, Tommy said, taking his change. Hey, you coming to the game Friday? Oh wait, you'll probably be working. Huh? Got to help Mom make rent. The bell over the door jingled as Tommy left, laughing. Mr. Chen put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. That boy, he said, shaking his head. His father owned half the stores downtown. But you worth 10 of him. Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He went back to the stockroom, lost himself in counting and organizing until it was time for school. The morning classes passed in a blur. In math, MS. Peterson handed back their latest tests. A red B+ sat at the top of Marcus's paper. Miss? He raised his hand. I think there's a mistake. All my answers are correct. MS. Peterson came over, lips pursed. Your work isn't shown clearly enough, Marcus. I can't give full credit if I can't follow your process. But the answers dash. The process matters, Marcus. You need to be able to show your work properly. He looked down at his paper. Every answer was right. He checked them 3 times. The process was there, just not written out in the exact way she wanted. At lunch, he sat alone in the cafeteria, pulling out his phone to check his bank balance. $246.73. Not enough. Not with Mom cutting back hours. He opened the job search app, scrolled through listings. Nothing he was qualified for. Nothing that would work with his school schedule. Did you hear? A voice drifted over from the next table. Tommy said that Chen guy made him get his 100 verified this morning. Like he was trying to pass fake bills or something. For real? That's messed up. My dad says those people are always suspicious of everyone. Marcus kept his eyes on his phone, but his appetite was gone. He wrapped up his half-eaten sandwich and headed to the library for the rest of lunch period. The librarian, Mrs. Washington, smiled at him as he came in. Marcus, I was hoping you'd stop by. Any chance you're still interested in that after-school position? His heart lifted for a moment, then fell. Is it still just Thursdays and Fridays? I'm afraid so. Budget cuts. I need more hours than that, he said. But thank you. When he got home that evening, the apartment was dark. A note sat on the kitchen table, working late at supermarket. Couldn't get coverage for full shift. Dinner in fridge. Love you? Marcus heated up the leftover spaghetti, ate it standing at the counter. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother, taking break. How was school? He typed back, good. Got a B+ in math. 3 dots appeared as she typed. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, we'll talk to the principal tomorrow. No need. I'm handling it. Baby, you shouldn't have to handle it. None of this is fair. Marcus stared at the text, at that word. Fair. He thought about Tommy and his $100 bill. About MS. Peterson and her red pen. About the woman crossing the street that morning. Life's not fair, he typed back. I'm okay. Get some rest. Love you? He did the dishes, cleaned the kitchen, checked that all the doors were locked. In his room, he laid out his clothes for tomorrow, packed his backpack. Everything in its place. Everything under control. His mother's cough echoed through the walls again. Marcus lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, doing the math over and over. Rent, utilities, food, medicine. The numbers wouldn't add up, no matter how many times he tried. Tomorrow would be better, he told himself. Tomorrow something would change. He didn't know yet how right he was. The next morning hit Marcus like a slap of cold water. No gradual waking, no peaceful transition. Just his alarm cutting through darkness at 5:30 a.m. His mother wasn't coughing today. The apartment was silent, which worried him more. He found her at the kitchen table, still in her robe, staring at a pile of bills. Mom, why aren't you dressed? She looked up, eyes red, cold and sick. Just needed one day. Marcus's chest tightened. His mother never took sick days. Never. I'll stay home too, he said. Help out dash no. She straightened up, pushed the bills aside. You're going to school. End of discussion. He wanted to argue, but her face had that look, the one that said she'd made up her mind. Instead, he made her tea, watched her take her medicine, and headed out earlier than usual. No point in hanging around when he couldn't help. The morning air hit him with an autumn chill. Marcus zipped up his thin jacket, wishing he'd grabbed a sweater. But new clothes weren't in the budget, not with those bills piling up on the kitchen table. He walked his usual route toward school, past Chen's corner store. The closed sign was still up, too early even for inventory. Past the supermarket where his mother usually worked, dark and quiet. Past Wilson's pharmacy, where last month. Marcus stopped, the memory hitting him hard. He'd gone in to pick up his mother's prescription. Had the money counted out exact, $42.50. The pharmacist took one look at him and called the manager. Said there'd been some counterfeit bills passed recently. Asked where he got the money. Called the cops. 2 hours in the back office, trying to explain. His mother having to leave work early to verify his story. The shame of it burning in his gut. Hey, watch it. A man in an expensive suit brushed past him on the sidewalk. Coffee cup in hand, phone to his ear. Marcus stumbled back, mumbled sorry, even though it wasn't his fault. That's when he saw it. A leather wallet, lying on the sidewalk where the man had just passed. Marcus looked up. The man was already half a block ahead, still talking on his phone. He looked back at the wallet. Brown leather, expensive. The kind his father used to carry, before he left. His hands moved without thinking, picking it up. The leather was soft, worn. Inside, crisp bills peeked out. A driver's license showed a white-haired man's face. William Parker. Address in the business district downtown. Marcus counted the money with shaking hands. $500 in 50s. Credit cards. Business cards. A photo of 2 smiling kids in graduation gowns. A voice in his head, sounding suspiciously like Tommy Andrews, whispered, "Take it. No one saw you pick it up. $500 would help with the bills." With Mom's medicine, another memory flashed. Standing in that pharmacy office, police officers looking down at him, asking where he got the money. The weight of their assumptions crushing him. Yo, Marcus! He jumped, quickly pocketing the wallet. Deshaun from his math class jogged up, basketball under his arm. You good? Looking kind of spooked. Yeah, just... Marcus felt the wallet heavy in his pocket. Thinking about stuff. Better think about getting to school. MS. Peterson's got that pop quiz today. How do you know about that? Deshaun grinned. My girl Jenny's in first period. Just texted me. Marcus checked his phone. 7:45 a.m. School started at 8:30. The business district was in the opposite direction, at least a 30-minute walk. I got to handle something, he said. Cover for me in first period. Deshaun's eyebrows rose. You? Skipping class? For real? It's important. More important than Peterson failing you? You know she's looking for any excuse. Marcus felt the wallet in his pocket. Thought about his mother at the kitchen table, bills spread out like a losing hand of cards. Yeah, he said. More important. Deshaun studied him for a moment, then shrugged. Your funeral? Man. But hey, when she asks, I ain't seen you. Thanks. Marcus waited until Deshaun was gone, then pulled out his phone. Googled the address from the license. 14 blocks away, in the heart of the business district. He'd never been there, had no reason to be there. People like him didn't belong in that part of town. He started walking, the wallet a constant reminder against his leg. Every step, another argument in his head. Keep it. Return it. Keep it. Return it. A police car rolled past. Marcus kept his face neutral, hands visible. The officer inside gave him a long look but didn't stop. Keep it. Return it. He thought about his mother's face this morning, defeated by those bills. Thought about her cough, getting worse because she couldn't afford to take enough time off to really rest. Keep it. Return it. The buildings around him started changing. Rundown stores became sleek office towers. Graffiti-marked walls became gleaming glass. People in suits rushed past, giving him wide berth despite the crowded sidewalk. Keep it. Return it. A memory. His mother's voice, tired but firm. Your integrity is all you've got in this world, baby. Don't let anyone take that from you. Marcus stopped in front of a towering office building. Number 1420. The address from the license. Through the revolving glass doors, he could see a security desk, marble floors, men and women in business attire rushing to elevators. Keep it. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Hope you're having a good day, baby. Remember, you're better than what they think. Love you. Marcus took a deep breath and pushed through the revolving door. The security guard looked up immediately, hand moving to his belt. Can I help you? Marcus pulled out the wallet, held it up carefully. I found this. It belongs to Mr. William Parker. His license says he works here. The guard's eyes narrowed. Where'd you get that? On the sidewalk. Near Wilson's Pharmacy. About 14 blocks from here. And you just found it? Yes, sir. And you walked all the way here to return it? Yes, sir. The guard picked up his phone, eyes not leaving Marcus. Mr. Parker? There's someone here with... Yes, sir. Says he found your wallet. No, sir. I don't. Yes, sir. He hung up. Wait there. Don't move. Marcus stood still, wallet still held out in front of him. Other people in the lobby were starting to stare. A woman clutched her purse closer as she hurried past. The elevator dinged. A white-haired man in an expensive suit stepped out, eyes scanning the lobby until they found Marcus. This was it. The moment of truth. Keep it. Too late now. The man, Mr. Parker, walked over slowly, looking from Marcus to the wallet and back again. Young man, he said, voice carrying across the now quiet lobby. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Marcus swallowed hard and stepped forward, mother's words echoing in his head. Your integrity is all you've got in this world. He held out the wallet. What happened next would change everything. The lobby fell silent. For a moment, all Marcus could hear was the soft hum of the air conditioning and his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Mr. Parker didn't take the wallet immediately. Instead, he looked at Marcus with pale blue eyes that seemed to cut right through him. You walked 14 blocks to return this. Yes, sir. Marcus kept his hand steady, the wallet still extended. The security guard stepped closer, hand still on his belt. Should I call the police, Mr. Parker? Why? Marcus's voice came out sharper than he intended. I'm just returning his wallet. A small crowd had begun to gather in the lobby. Office workers stopped on their way to the elevators, phones appearing in hands, cameras pointing in his direction. Mr. Parker held up a hand to the security guard. Let's verify the contents first. He finally took the wallet, opened it. How much money was in here when you found it? $500, Marcus said. In 50s. 10 of them. Plus 3 credit cards, your driver's license, and a picture of your kids at graduation. The older man's eyebrows lifted slightly as he counted. And it's all here. Of course it is. Marcus fought to keep the frustration out of his voice. I didn't take anything. A lot of people would have. A new voice joined in. A man in a dark suit stepped forward from the crowd. Especially someone who clearly needs the money. Marcus felt heat rise in his face. He looked down at his worn shoes, his second-hand clothes. What's that supposed to mean? Jim, Mr. Parker warned, but the man continued. I've seen this scam before. Find a wallet, return it empty, wait for a reward. Or return it full, make yourself look honest, then try to get hired. Build trust, then steal even more. The crowd murmured. More phones came out. Marcus saw a security camera in the corner turn toward him. That's not what I'm doing. His voice sounded young in his ears, desperate. I just wanted to return it. Then why didn't you just turn it into the police? The security guard asked. Right, Jim added. Why come all this way? Miss school for it? Marcus's mind raced. How did they know he was missing school? Then he remembered his backpack, still on his shoulder, obviously a student. Hi. He swallowed. I wanted to return it directly, to make sure you got credit for it. You mean, Jim said. Maybe a little reward. No. Marcus took a step back as the security guard moved closer. That's not Dash, wait. A woman's voice from the crowd. I recognize him. He's the one they caught at Wilson's Pharmacy last month, trying to pass fake bills. The murmurs grew louder. Marcus felt the walls closing in. Just like at the pharmacy. Just like every time. That wasn't, they made a mistake, Dash. Should I call the police now, Mr. Parker? The guard's hand moved to his radio. Marcus looked at the exit. He could run. Just turn and run, like his father did. Leave it all behind. But his mother's voice came back to him. You're better than what they think. He straightened his shoulders, looked Mr. Parker in the eye. Sir, I found your wallet on the sidewalk near Wilson's Pharmacy. I saw all the money inside and yes, I thought about keeping it. My mom's sick. We've got bills, and $500 would help a lot. The crowd went quiet, waiting. But I didn't keep it, Marcus continued. Because that's not who I am. That's not who my mother raised me to be. I walked 14 blocks because it was the right thing to do. Not for a reward. Not for a job. Not for anything except doing what's right. His voice cracked on the last word, but he kept going. And yes, someone called the police on me at the pharmacy last month. Because I was a black kid with money, so I must have been doing something wrong. Just like now, I'm trying to do something good, and you're all standing there assuming the worst. He took a breath, hands shaking. Go ahead. Call the police. I'll tell them the same thing. And then I'll go back to school and take my math test and keep trying to do the right thing. Even though people like you make it so damn hard. Silence fell over the lobby. Marcus could feel sweat running down his back, his heart hammering against his ribs. He waited for the handcuffs, for the accusations, for the same old story to play out again. Mr. Parker closed his wallet slowly, looked at the security guard, at Jim, at the crowd with their phones. Young man, he said, what's your name? Marcus Johnson, sir. Well, Marcus Johnson. Mr. Parker stepped forward. Marcus braced himself. Here it comes. But Mr. Parker wasn't reaching for him. He was reaching back into his wallet. Don't, Marcus said quickly. Please. I don't want your money. That's not why I dash. I believe you. Mr. Parker's voice cut through the lobby like a knife. Jim, stand down. Rick, get your hand off that radio. And all of you. He turned to the crowd. Don't you have jobs to do? People began to drift away, some looking embarrassed, others still suspicious. Jim opened his mouth to protest, but Mr. Parker silenced him with a look. Marcus, Mr. Parker said, turning back. Would you join me in my office for a moment? The security guard stepped forward. Sir, I really think I think you've done enough thinking for one day, Rick. Mr. Parker's voice was cold. This young man just showed more integrity in 5 minutes than I've seen in this building all year. He's my guest. Marcus stood frozen, unsure what to do. This wasn't how these situations usually ended. Unless, Mr. Parker added, you need to get to school. Marcus thought about Ms. Peterson's math test, about his mother's face this morning, about everything that had led him to this moment. No, sir, he said. I've got time. Mr. Parker nodded, gestured to the elevator. As they walked past the security desk, he stopped. Rick? Yes, Mr. Parker. When Marcus leaves, you'll give him your card, with your direct number, so that next time he visits, and there will be a next time, we don't have another misunderstanding. The guard's face reddened. Yes, sir. In the elevator, Marcus finally let out the breath he'd been holding. His hands were still shaking. 42nd floor, Mr. Parker said, pressing the button. And Marcus? Yes, sir. Thank you. Not just for the wallet, for reminding an old man what courage looks like. The elevator doors closed, carrying them up toward whatever came next. The elevator ride felt endless. Marcus watched the numbers climb. 20, 21, 22. His reflection in the polished doors showed a boy trying too hard to stand tall. You said your mother is sick. Mr. Parker's voice broke the silence. Yes, sir. Marcus kept his eyes on the numbers. Respiratory infection. And she works 2 jobs. Or, she did. Had to cut back. The elevator stopped at 42. The doors opened to reveal a floor that looked nothing like the stark lobby below. Warm wood panels lined the walls. Thick carpet muffled their footsteps. A police officer stood by the reception desk. Marcus froze. Mr. Parker put a hand on his shoulder. It's all right, he said. Standard security protocol. Someone probably called them when the crowd gathered downstairs. The officer, his nameplate read Rodriguez, looked up from talking to the receptionist. Mr. Parker? We got a call about a disturbance in the lobby. No disturbance, officer. Just a misunderstanding about my wallet, which this young man found and returned. Officer Rodriguez's eyes settled on Marcus. Your name? Son. Marcus Johnson. The officer pulled out a notepad. Any ID? Marcus reached for his school ID, movement slow and deliberate. The officer took it, studied it, then spoke into his radio. Dispatch, run a check on Marcus Johnson, DOB. He looked at the ID again. August 15, 2008. The radio crackled. Marcus's heart pounded. He thought about the pharmacy incident. Would that show up? Mr. Parker cleared his throat. Is this really necessary? The boy returned my wallet. With everything in it? Just procedure, sir. Officer Rodriguez kept his eyes on Marcus. Where exactly did you find this wallet? On the sidewalk, near Wilson's pharmacy. Wilson's? The officer's eyebrows lifted. Weren't you involved in some incident there recently? There it was. Marcus took a deep breath. That was a misunderstanding. They said you tried to pass counterfeit bills. They were wrong. Marcus's voice shook slightly. My mother came, showed them the ATM receipt, proved where the money came from. The radio crackled again. A female voice, dispatched to Rodriguez. Subject has no record. One reported incident last month at Wilson's pharmacy. No charges filed. Officer Rodriguez wrote something in his notepad. And you just happened to find Mr. Parker's wallet near this same pharmacy? Yes, sir. With $500 inside. Yes, sir. And you walked 14 blocks to return it? Yes, sir. Missing school to do so. Marcus straightened up. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking a small rule to follow a bigger one. Mr. Parker made a sound that might have been a laugh. Officer Rodriguez didn't smile. Mr. Parker, the officer said, would you like to check the wallet again? Make sure nothing's missing. I already did. Mr. Parker's voice was firm. Everything is exactly as it should be. A commotion at the elevator made them all turn. Jim from downstairs burst out, followed by two more men in suits. Well, Jim called out. The board meeting started 10 minutes ago. Everyone's waiting. And why is he still here? He jerked his head toward Marcus. Jim, Mr. Parker said calmly. Call down and reschedule the meeting. Reschedule? Are you crazy? The quarterly numbers dash. Can wait. Mr. Parker's voice hardened. Something more important has come up. Jim's face reddened. More important? This kid probably planted that wallet. Probably worked with someone to steal it in the first place. Why else would he dash? That's enough. Mr. Parker's shout echoed through the office. Everyone froze. Officer Rodriguez, are we done here? The officer looked at his notepad, then at Marcus. Just one more thing. You said you found the wallet this morning. Yes, sir. Around 7:45. And you came straight here. Yes, sir. Can anyone verify that? Marcus thought. Deshawn, a friend from school. He saw me on the sidewalk when I found it. And the security cameras at Wilson's might show me picking it up. Officer Rodriguez nodded slowly. Mr. Parker, would you like us to check those cameras? Get statements from witnesses. Mr. Parker looked at Marcus for a long moment. No, he said finally. I don't need cameras to tell me what I can see with my own eyes. Sir, Jim protested. You can't seriously dash. What I can see, Mr. Parker continued, voice rising, is a young man who could have taken my money he clearly needs, but chose to return it instead. Who walked 14 blocks and faced hostility and suspicion to do the right thing. Who stood his ground and told the truth, even when everyone assumed the worst. He turned to Officer Rodriguez. Are we done here? The officer closed his notepad. Yes, sir. Just need contact information in case we have any follow-up questions. Marcus gave his address and phone number. Hand steady now. As the officer wrote, a woman's voice called from down the hall. Is that him? The thief? Marcus turned. A group of office workers had gathered, phones out again. One woman pointed at him. That's him. From the pharmacy. I knew I recognized him. My sister works there. Said he tried to use fake money. The whispers started again. Phones recorded. Marcus felt the familiar weight of judgment pressing down on him. Mr. Parker's voice cut through the noise. Marcus, come with me. He turned to Jim. Cancel the board meeting. And get these people back to work. But dash, now. Mr. Parker led Marcus down a hallway, away from the staring eyes and pointing phones. They entered a large corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. The city spread out below them, morning sun glinting off distant buildings. Sit, Mr. Parker said, pointing to a leather chair. He closed the door, shutting out the whispers and accusations. Marcus sat, wondering what came next. His phone buzzed, probably the school calling about his absence. Or his mother, wondering where he was. Mr. Parker sat behind his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folder. "Now then," he said, "tell me about this math test you're missing." "MS. Peterson's Algebra 2 class," Marcus said, wondering why this mattered now. "It's a pop quiz. The same MS. Peterson who doesn't believe you can solve equations without a calculator." Mr. Parker was reading from a paper in the folder. Marcus sat up straighter. "How do you know about that?" "I made some calls while you were talking to the officer. Spoke to your principal." Mr. Parker closed the folder. Straight A's in math. High BS in everything else. No disciplinary issues. Glowing recommendations from most teachers. Except MS. Peterson. Outside the office, voices rose and fell. Phones rang. Life went on as if this moment wasn't changing everything. "Sir," Marcus said. "Why are you dash?" A knock at the door interrupted him. Jim burst in without waiting for an answer. "Will, this is ridiculous. The board is furious. And now there's video of the lobby incident all over social media. People are saying dash." "What are they saying, Jim?" Mr. Parker's voice was deadly quiet. Jim glanced at Marcus, then back at Mr. Parker. "That we're harboring a potential thief. That security protocols were breached. That you're letting emotion cloud your judgment." Marcus's phone buzzed again. A text from Deshawn. "Yo, where are you? Everyone's talking about some video." "That you?" Another buzz. His mother, school called. "What's going on? Are you okay?" "My mom," Marcus said, standing up. "I need to call her." "Sit." Mr. Parker pointed to the chair. "We'll handle that. Jim, get Marcus's mother on the phone. Her number should be in the security log." "Will, you can't be serious dash. Her number. Now." Jim stormed out. Mr. Parker turned back to Marcus. "Now, about MS. Peterson dash." Another knock. Officer Rodriguez stepped in. "Sorry to interrupt, but we pulled the security footage from Wilson's pharmacy." Marcus's stomach dropped. Here it came, proof he was lying. Somehow, even though he wasn't. The officer placed a tablet on Mr. Parker's desk. Time-stamp matches. Shows the subject, Mr. Johnson, picking up what appears to be a wallet from the sidewalk. He checks inside, looks around, presumably for the owner. Mr. Parker watched the footage. And nothing. He puts it in his pocket and walks away. "Toward your building." "So he's telling the truth." "It appears so." Officer Rodriguez turned to Marcus. "Sorry for the suspicion, son. Standard procedure." Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. The officer left, closing the door behind him. Jim returned, face tight. "Her boss says she's not at work. Called in sick. Try their home number." "Already did." No answer. Marcus pulled out his phone. "I'll call her dash." The office door burst open again. The woman from earlier, the one with the sister at the pharmacy, stood there with her phone held out. "You need to see this," she said to Mr. Parker. "It's going viral." Mr. Parker took the phone. Marcus watched his face darken as he watched whatever was on the screen. "How many views?" "Over 10,000 already. Comments are not good." Marcus stood up, moved around the desk. The video showed him in the lobby, surrounded by people. But the audio was cut, edited, made it look like he was arguing, aggressive. The comments scrolled past. "Another scam artist. Can't trust them. Should have called the cops right away. Bet the wallet was empty when he found it." His hands clenched into fists. All his life, trying to do right. All his life, being assumed wrong. His phone buzzed again. "Deshawn, man, you're trending. Not in a good way." Then his mother. "Baby, please call me. People are sending me links." What's happening? The pressure built in his chest. The familiar weight of judgment, of assumptions, of having to prove himself over and over and over. "I need to go." His voice came out rough. "I need to dash, Marcus." Mr. Parker stood up. Don't what? Don't run? Don't get angry? Don't feel like everything I do just makes things worse. Don't let them win." Marcus laughed, a harsh sound. "They already won. They won before I walked in here. They won the moment I was born looking like this." He gestured at the phone, still playing that edited video. "Look at the comments. Look at how ready everyone was to believe the worst. The security guard, the cop, your friend Jim, everyone. I could have kept that wallet, could have taken the money and no one would have known. But I didn't, because my mom taught me better. And what did it get me? His voice cracked. More suspicion. More accusations. More people looking at me like I'm nothing but a threat. A thief. A liar. He sank back into the chair, suddenly exhausted. Maybe my father had the right idea. Just walk away. Stop trying to prove yourself to people who'll never believe you anyway. Mr. Parker was quiet for a long moment. Then he pressed a button on his desk phone. Janet, get me the building security footage from the lobby. All of it. Unedited. And call the local news stations. Tell them William Parker wants to make a statement about this morning's events. He looked at Marcus. I'm not letting them win. And neither are you. The phone on his desk rang. He answered, listened, then held it out to Marcus. It's your mother. Marcus took the phone with shaking hands. Mom! Baby! Her voice was tight with worry. What's going on? Are you okay? He looked at Mr. Parker, who nodded encouragingly. Yeah, Mom, he said. I'm okay. Something happened this morning. Something that might change everything. And as he began to tell her the story, Mr. Parker walked to his office door and began closing it against the chaos outside. But before it shut completely, Marcus heard him say to someone, Get me MS. Peterson's supervisor on the phone. Now! Mr. Parker's office had become a command center. 3 TV screens mounted on the wall showed different news channels, all running the same story. Viral video sparks controversy at downtown office building. Marcus sat in the leather chair, his mother's voice still echoing in his ears from their call. She'd wanted to come down immediately. Mr. Parker had assured her Marcus was safe, promised to drive him home himself. The unedited footage is ready, Janet announced from the doorway. News stations are standing by for your statement. Mr. Parker nodded. Send it to all of them. Every second. From the moment Marcus walked in until we got in the elevator. The board is asking Dash. The board can wait. He turned to Marcus. Ready? For what? To tell your side of the story. The real story. Marcus shook his head. Nobody wants to hear my side. I do. The voice came from the doorway. Officer Rodriguez had returned, notepad in hand. And I owe you an apology. Jim pushed past the officer. Will, the board is threatening to convene an emergency session. This is getting out of control. No, Mr. Parker said. It's finally getting in control. He pressed another button on his desk phone. Janet, is the press here? Lobby's full of reporters. Good. Tell security to bring them up. All of them. Jim's face went red. You can't be serious. This will tank our stock price. The shareholders Dash. The shareholders, Mr. Parker cut in, will understand that some things matter more than money. He looked at Marcus. Some people matter more. Marcus watched the news channels, where the edited video played on repeat. Comments scrolled across the bottom. Racism alive and well. Give the kid a chance. There must be more to this story. His phone buzzed again. Deshaun. Whole school watching the news. MS. Peterson looking sick. Another message popped up. Unknown number. You're an inspiration, young man. Don't let them bring you down. Then another. We believe you. And another. Stay strong, brother. The office door opened. Janet led in a group of reporters, cameras, microphones. Marcus started to stand, but Mr. Parker put a hand on his shoulder. Stay seated. This is your moment. Tell them what happened. All of it. The cameras turned on. Microphones pushed forward. Marcus felt the weight of every eye, every lens. Young man, one reporter started. What made you decide to return the wallet? Marcus looked at Mr. Parker, who nodded encouragingly. He took a deep breath. My mom, he said. She taught me that integrity isn't something you turn on and off depending on who's watching. It's who you are when everything and everyone is telling you to be something else. The cameras moved closer. More questions came. Were you afraid when people started accusing you? What about the pharmacy incident? How does it feel to have the video go viral? Marcus answered each one. Truthfully. Calmly. The same way he'd stood his ground in the lobby. Officer Rodriguez stepped forward. I've reviewed all the footage. Interviewed witnesses. This young man did everything right. I jumped to conclusions. That's on us, not him. Jim snorted from the corner. This is a circus. No, Mr. Parker said, standing. This is a lesson. One that everyone in this building needs to learn. He faced the cameras. Marcus Johnson returned my wallet today. $500 inside. All my cards. Everything. He walked 14 blocks to do it. Missed a math test. Faced suspicion, harassment, and prejudice. And he did it because it was right. The room went quiet. But that's not the real story, Mr. Parker continued. The real story is what happened next. How quickly we, myself included, let prejudice cloud our judgment. How ready we were to assume the worst. He put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. This young man showed more character in 5 minutes than most people show in a lifetime. And we almost missed it because we couldn't see past our own biases. Marcus felt something shift in the room, saw it in the reporters' faces. The way they looked at him now, not with suspicion, but with understanding. His phone buzzed again. His mother. I'm so proud of you, baby. The office door opened one more time. A man in an expensive suit, more expensive than Jim's, walked in. Will, he said, the board has watched the unedited footage. And your statement. He looked at Marcus. Young man, we owe you an apology. And perhaps more than that. Mr. Parker smiled. Marcus, meet Robert Chen, chairman of the board. Marcus stood, extended his hand like his mother taught him. Firm grip, eye contact. Sir. Robert Chen shook his hand. Mr. Parker tells me you're good with numbers. And clearly, you understand something about integrity. Yes, sir. How would you feel about an internship? After school hours, of course. We could use someone like you. Marcus felt the room holding its breath. Cameras still rolling. Witnesses to this moment. He thought about his mother at the kitchen table. About bills and medicine. About MS. Peterson and her tests. But mostly, he thought about integrity. About being who you are when the whole world expects something else. Thank you, sir, he said. But I'd need to discuss it with my mother first. Robert Chen smiled. Of course. Family first. I respect that. He handed Marcus a business card. Have her call me directly. The reporters started asking new questions. The story was changing, turning into something else. Something about hope and change and second chances. But Marcus wasn't listening anymore. He was looking at his phone, at the last text from his mother. See, baby? Sometimes doing right pays off. Not because of the reward, but because of who it makes you. Mr. Parker caught his eye, nodded toward the door. Ready to go home? Marcus stood, feeling taller somehow. Stronger. Yes, sir. I've got a math test to make up tomorrow. The drive home in Mr. Parker's Mercedes was surreal. Marcus watched his neighborhood approach through tinted windows, everything familiar looking somehow different. Your mother works there? Mr. Parker asked, nodding toward the supermarket as they passed. Yes, sir. Morning shift usually, when she's not sick. And the diner? Evening shift. At least, she used to. Mr. Parker made a note on his phone at a red light. The respiratory infection. How long has she had it? About 3 months. Marcus looked down at his hands. Insurance doesn't cover all the medicines she needs. They pulled up to his apartment building. Marcus saw his mother waiting outside, still in her robe, tension visible in her stance. Marcus. She rushed forward as he got out of the car. Baby, are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. He hugged her, felt her trembling. Everything's okay. Mr. Parker stepped out of the car. Mrs. Johnson? William Parker. We spoke on the phone. Marcus's mother straightened up, one arm still around him. Thank you for bringing him home, Mr. Parker. And for believing him. Mr. Parker smiled. Your son made that easy. Would you mind if we talked for a moment? About his future. Inside their small apartment, Marcus watched his mother transform into her company mode, the way she acted at parent-teacher conferences. Back straight, voice steady, hiding how tired she was. Coffee, Mr. Parker. Please. He sat at their kitchen table, looking at the bills still scattered there. Mrs. Johnson, your son showed exceptional character today. That's who he is. She set coffee cups down, sat across from him. Even when people don't see it, people saw it today. The unedited video is trending now. The real story. Marcus checked his phone. Messages flooded in, from Deshaun. You're all over Twitter, bro. In a good way now. From MS. Peterson. Please see me before class tomorrow. From unknown numbers. You showed them. Stay strong. We need more people like you. The board has offered Marcus an internship, Mr. Parker said. But that's just the start. His mother's hand found Marcus's under the table. What do you mean? I've set up a college fund for him. Full ride, any school he chooses. The kitchen went silent. Marcus felt his mother's hand tighten on his. Mr. Parker, she started. That's very generous, but it's not charity. He leaned forward. It's investment. In talent. In character. In the kind of person we need more of. Still, his mother said, why? Mr. Parker was quiet for a moment. Because 30 years ago, I was where Marcus is now. Different circumstances, different challenges. But I know what it's like to need one person to believe in you. One chance to prove yourself. He pulled out his wallet, the same one Marcus had returned, and removed an old photo. A younger version of himself, standing proud in a janitor's uniform. Someone gave me a chance. Changed my life. He looked at Marcus. Time to pass it forward. Marcus's phone buzzed again. The local news was live outside their building. They want to interview you, Mr. Parker said. Both of you. But it's your choice. His mother squeezed his hand. What do you think, baby? Marcus thought about Ms. Peterson. About the pharmacy. About every time he'd been judged before anyone knew his name. Will it change anything? He asked Mr. Parker. You already have. Mr. Parker showed him his phone. The unedited video had millions of views now. Comments poured in. This is what character looks like. Made me rethink my own prejudices. My son needs to see this. A knock at their door. Janet, Mr. Parker's assistant, stood there with a news crew. They're ready when you are. Marcus looked at his mother. She nodded, proud tears in her eyes. Tell them, she said softly. Tell them who you really are. The interview lasted an hour. Marcus told the whole story, not just about the wallet, but about everything. The daily challenges, the constant need to prove himself, the weight of other people's assumptions. His mother spoke too, about raising a black son in America, about teaching him to be strong and gentle at the same time, about watching him face adult challenges while still a child. When it was done, when the cameras were off, Mr. Parker stood to leave. I'll send a car for you tomorrow, Marcus. For school? No, sir. Marcus shook his head. I'll take the bus. Like always. Mr. Parker smiled. Because that's who you are. Yes, sir. After he left, after the news crew packed up, after their small apartment was quiet again, Marcus sat with his mother on their worn couch. You okay, baby? Yeah. He showed her his phone. More messages. More support. It's just a lot. She pulled him close, like when he was little. Your father would be proud. Marcus tensed. You don't know that. I do. She kissed his forehead. Because I'm proud enough for both of us. His phone buzzed one last time. Mr. Parker, board meeting tomorrow after school. Wear the suit I'm sending over. Time to show them what real change looks like. Marcus typed back. Yes, sir. And, thank you. No, came the reply. Thank you for reminding an old man what integrity looks like. Outside, the news van finally drove away. The street returned to its normal quiet. But nothing else would ever be normal again. And for once, that felt like a good thing. The next morning hit different. Marcus woke before his alarm, the events of yesterday still spinning in his head. A garment bag hung on his bedroom door, the suit Mr. Parker had promised. His mother stood in the doorway as he got dressed, tears in her eyes. Look at you, she whispered. All grown up? The suit fit perfectly. Dark blue, crisp white shirt, silk tie. Marcus barely recognized himself in the mirror. How did he know my size? Janet called last night, his mother said. Asked about everything. Your measurements, your favorite colors. She straightened his tie. She also asked about your medicine schedule. My what? Your asthma medicine, the one we couldn't afford to refill. She held up a pharmacy bag. It was delivered this morning. Along with my prescriptions. Marcus stared at the bag. Mom, we can't accept baby. She cut him off. Sometimes blessings come from unexpected places. Our job isn't to question them, just to use them right. The bus ride to school felt like entering another world. People stared at his suit, whispered behind their phones. Some smiled. Some looked away. Deshaun met him at the front steps. Damn, bro. You looking like Obama's son or something. It's just a suit. Nah, it's more than that. You're trending everywhere. Local hero and stuff. Inside, the hallways went quiet as Marcus passed. Teachers nodded respectfully. Students who'd never spoken to him suddenly said hello. First period, MS. Peterson's class. She stood when he entered, the room falling silent. Marcus, she said, voice different than he'd ever heard it. May I speak with you in the hall? Outside, she couldn't quite meet his eyes. I saw the news, she said. The video. Everything. Yes. She took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. Many apologies. Marcus thought about all the times she'd questioned his work, doubted his abilities, assumed the worst. I was wrong, she continued. About you. About many things. The test I missed yesterday, Marcus said. Can I make it up? She finally looked at him directly. No need. I've reviewed your work all semester. Your grades, they should have been higher. I'm changing them. All of them. MS. Peterson dash. It's the right thing to do. She smiled slightly. Someone reminded me recently about the importance of integrity. Back in class, Marcus felt eyes on him again. But different now. Respectful. Maybe even admiring. His phone buzzed during lunch. Janet. Car waiting outside for board meeting. The same security guard, Rick, met him in the lobby. Mr. Johnson. Right this way. Sir. Sir. That was new. The elevator ride felt shorter this time. The boardroom doors opened to reveal Mr. Parker and 12 other executives. Marcus, Mr. Parker smiled. Ready to change some minds? The next 2 hours were a blur of presentations. Statistics about workplace diversity. Stories about unconscious bias. Videos of yesterday's events. Marcus shared his story again. But this time, he added more. What happened yesterday wasn't just about a wallet, he told them. It was about assumptions. About who gets the benefit of the doubt and who doesn't. About how hard some people have to work just to be seen as honest. The board members listened. Really listened. Then Robert Chen stood up. We're implementing new policies, he announced. Training programs. Internships for underprivileged youth. Scholarships. He looked at Marcus. And we want you to help design them. Me? Who better? You lived it. You can help us do better. After the meeting, Mr. Parker walked Marcus to his office. That suit suits you, he said, smiling at his own joke. Thank you, sir, for everything. Don't thank me yet. He handed Marcus a folder. Your internship contract. 3 days a week, after school. Fair pay, flexible hours for studying. Marcus opened the folder. The salary made his eyes widen. Sir, this is too much. It's market rate for someone with your potential. Mr. Parker sat behind his desk. Now, about your mother's medical bills. By the time Marcus left the building, the sun was setting. Rick, the security guard, handed him a pass card. For next time, he said, no more misunderstandings. Outside, a familiar face waited. Deshaun, thought you might want company on the bus, his friend said. Plus, everyone at school's dying to hear what happened. They walked to the bus stop, Marcus still in his suit, Deshaun asking questions about the board meeting. A woman crossed the street when she saw them coming. But this time, Marcus kept his head high. This time, he knew exactly who he was. His phone buzzed. His mother. Dinner's ready, baby. Proud of you? Marcus smiled. The suit felt comfortable now. Like it belonged. Like he belonged. Coming home, he texted back. Wait till you hear about today. The bus arrived. As they boarded, Deshaun nudged him. You know everything's different now, right? Marcus thought about MS. Peterson's apology. About the board meeting. About his mother's medicine. Yeah, he said. Different is good. The bus pulled away from the curb, carrying him toward whatever came next. And for the first time in a long time, the future looked brighter than the past. 1 month later, Marcus stood in front of Wilson's pharmacy, straightening his tie. The same sidewalk where he'd found Mr. Parker's wallet now felt like another lifetime ago. You sure about this? Deshaun asked beside him. Yeah, Marcus said. Time to close the circle. Inside, the pharmacy looked smaller than he remembered. The same security cameras watched from above, but they didn't feel as threatening anymore. The pharmacist, the one who'd called the police on him before, recognized him immediately. Her face went pale. Can I help you? Marcus placed his company ID card on the counter. I'm here about the incident last month. We. She glanced at his suit, his ID, back to his face. "We apologize for that." "Not to me," Marcus said. "To my mother." The manager appeared from the back office. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem." Marcus kept his voice steady. "Just wanted to let you know that Parker Industries is implementing a new training program. About unconscious bias. About rushing to judgment." He pulled out a business card, his own now. "We'd like your staff to be the first participants." The manager took the card slowly. "You work for Parker Industries. Junior Operations Manager. And Policy Consultant." The words still felt strange on his tongue, but good. "True. The program is free," Marcus continued. "Mr. Parker insisted. Said something about turning negative experiences into positive change." He left them staring at his card, walked back into the morning sun where Deshawn waited. "That felt good," his friend said. "It did." His phone buzzed. "Mr. Parker, board meeting in 30. Bringing that kid from the South Side Project." "On our way," Marcus texted back. They caught the bus downtown. Marcus watched the familiar buildings pass, remembering that desperate walk a month ago. Now he made this trip 3 times a week, badge around his neck, respect in people's eyes. The lobby security guard, not Rick, a new guy, straightened up when he entered. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson." In the elevator, Deshawn shook his head. "Still can't get used to people calling you that." "Me neither sometimes." The boardroom was already full when they arrived. Mr. Parker stood at the head of the table, next to a nervous-looking boy about Marcus's age. "Marcus, this is James. The one I told you about." James wore clothes that reminded Marcus of his own. Before. Clean but worn. His hands twisted together as he looked around the room. "James was caught shoplifting last week," Mr. Parker explained. "Food for his siblings while their mother was in the hospital." Marcus extended his hand. "I hear you're good at math." "Yes, sir." James's voice was barely a whisper. "Stop calling me sir," Marcus smiled. "I was sitting where you are a month ago." He pulled out a chair, gestured for James to sit. "Let me tell you a story," Marcus began. "About choices and chances and doing the right thing even when it seems impossible." As he talked, he saw something change in James's eyes. The same thing that had changed in his own, that day with the wallet. Hope. His phone buzzed. His mother. "Medicine working great. Doctor says I can start full shifts again next week." Then another text. From MS. "Peterson, Marcus, the tutoring program you suggested is making a real difference. Thank you." And finally, from Mr. Parker. "Proud of you, son. Keep changing the world." Marcus looked at James, saw his younger self in those nervous eyes. "Ready to change your life?" he asked. James straightened in his chair. "Just a little." Yes. Good." Marcus turned to the board. "Let's begin." Later that evening, he stood on that same sidewalk where he'd found the wallet. The sun was setting, painting the buildings gold. Deshawn had gone home. James was with HR, filling out internship papers. The street was quiet. A woman approached from the other direction. Marcus waited for the familiar script, her crossing the street, avoiding eye contact. Instead, she smiled as she passed. "Have a good evening, young man." "You too." His phone buzzed one last time. His mother, "Dinner's ready." Invited Mr. Parker and Janet. Time to celebrate. Marcus looked down at the sidewalk where it all began. Thought about choices and consequences. About integrity and opportunity. About one moment changing everything. He took a deep breath of evening air, straightened his tie, and headed home. Not just walking tall. Because sometimes doing the right thing pays off in ways you never expect. Not because of the reward, but because of who it makes you. And Marcus Johnson knew exactly who he was now. He was the boy who returned the wallet. He was a man who held his ground. He was the change he wanted to see. And this was just the beginning.